Alright guys, TacticalRab here, and today I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And with the Major 3 qualifiers beginning here in just a couple of days, some major news coming out of the OpTic camp. iLLeY is seemingly not returning to the starting roster, at least for now. That's not the greatest news, but General is not going to be the replacement it seems going forwards. Another player stepping into the fray. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Videos to the channel, thank you very much indeed for doing that. First of all, congratulations to Simp and Rokkr. Awesome news they're getting married. I do wonder in the wake of the whole like Zinny Cat's girlfriend buff type thing, whether Simp is going to get some sort of engagement buff, which might be rather scary for the rest of the league. But again, the whole Gunless Pokemon thing from back in the day, but rather more serious, so thought that was awesome news, but plenty to dive into today. Firstly, this from Sledgehammer, they've done an update to the game. Of course, like, the things that they note right here, apart from the trophy system thing, not really relevant for competitive play, and this one, of course, not really relevant, because I don't even know what a Skull Crusher is, or Skull Crusher is, or I don't even know what it is even meant to be, to be perfectly honest. I don't play the game, I wouldn't know. This from Chrome, though, all operators are now silent, apparently, when mantling and landing, according to the patch notes. That was kind of the big deal of a couple of weeks or so ago. They did a patch update where the 3 agents, there was like 3 agents that were silent when you were kind of mantling, and they didn't do the whole moaning thing you do that the other teams can hear. Now, apparently they're now all silent, so they'd actually heard the feedback on this from the pros and like, okay, yeah, probably makes sense. Why do we give away free information when people are mantling and stuff? So they're all silent now. However, the initial response was that, okay, actually they still moan, they still make noises, but apparently they only make noises from your perspective, and essentially I kind of go on to confirm right here. Following today's update, players will still hear these sounds from their own operator, but enemy players will not. So I'm not really sure why I have to hear them or why the player themselves has to hear it, but it is what it is. At least the enemy players or the other team doesn't actually hear these kind of things anymore. So you can get away with mantling and doing stuff like this, even with dead silence and stuff, without being heard, because well, they've now finally made this in the right direction. Right, so it's taken several months, but you know, good response. Good to see Central Games actually, well, correcting this rather soon after it was raised as a key issue in the competitive scene. This also briefly some Rostermania stuff where we talk about the OpTic thing. Of course, Gizmo now back in the UK, I'm guessing to be closer to family and stuff like that. He, of course, well, his replacement on the London Royal Ravens team was Harry, who came over from the Toronto Ultra European Academy. Gizmo seemingly has taken his place, so effectively some sort of weird swap going on there where Gizmo's on the European Toronto Academy now, and well, I've got Harry, of course, in the starting London Royal Ravens team, but that's caused some crazy roster, well, role swaps over there, right, with Harry coming through, Nasty to the Flex, and Zero to one of the SMGs, if you guys are unfamiliar with that story, so see if that works out for them. Not incredibly hopeful, but well, obviously they think it's going to be a step in the right direction. Now, the OpTic guys, they're also taking some steps forward as well. They, of course, General subs in for them at the Prime Classic, not maybe the move they wanted to make. We did hear in the days leading up to it that practice with General was, you know, pretty tough. It was pretty difficult, wasn't ideal by any means, but they still come into the event, get out of their groups, take down FaZe, of course, so an incredible result, no doubt, but top 4, of course, well, maybe they could have gone one step further, but General still did a good job subbing in for them, but of course, the whole question was, well, at least when iLLeY was first announced to be gone from the team due to the thumb injury that he's currently got, and apparently still has, like Rambo said at the time, okay, we reckon he's going to be back in time for the Major 3 qualifiers. As it turns out, that's probably not the case. This was kind of the initial discussion here from Rambo, and basically he said that, like, iLLeY's got, like, effectively it's like a pimple or like a ball of pus thing on his thumb. I think people have been looking this up and saying it should take, you know, 1 to 2 weeks to heal up, something like that. The problem is, like, it's got to be 100% right, and you know, kind of as this drags on further and further, it does get somewhat scary, right, because we've seen in the past, like, you know, Zuma, other players have had injuries, and it's taken them a longer time to recover from than they've kind of expected to, and that's the thing, it's not just that iLLeY can sub in for the matches, he's got to play their practice right, and practicing, like, scrims, that's a big chunk of your day. You've got to play a lot of Call of Duty, many hours a day, like, your thumb's got to be 100% correct if you want to step back into that position, so I'm hoping they're still confident that iLLeY's going to be able to turn this around quickly, and I'm sure iLLeY's super frustrated, the fact that he can't play, the fact that he's sitting on the sidelines, and you know, every day and week that this drags on, that he can't be in the starting team, and also because they're now signing another player seemingly to their roster, like, even though it's probably only on like a 2-week contract for the moment, maybe implies that they're also kind of concerned about iLLeY's, you know, returning in the near future, to be honest. Hopefully he's back in due course, but yeah, apparently he won't be back this coming week, as it, well, Shotzi described on stream last night, basically saying that, like, yes, look, iLLeY still suffering with the thumb issues, like, he's trying to be a trooper and get through it, but yeah, for now he's not going to be able to return. So we'll roll the clip real quick.
So Ender is alive, yes, obviously. He's still having thumb problems though, so he probably won't be playing this Friday, but we're gonna wait to see. But Ender's a beast though, dude. Chat, in their tribes.
So they've got some pretty big matches this weekend. We'll see them here in just a second. But as General says after the event, this is what I did kind of wonder actually when the event finished, because all the talk was that, at least kind of the implication was, reading between the lines of some of these tweets, that General would no longer be involved in their team. As he says, GG's, unfortunate circumstances, appreciate all the support. And then, of course, further responses from the likes of Shotzi and the rest of the team saying, shout out General for showing up with a little practice. Guy's a beast. Basically, I don't know, for me, the implication was that we talked about that General's not going to be there anymore. And I was kind of thinking, okay, maybe if that's the case, then maybe, iLLeY's coming back, right? They're confident he's going to be back for the Major 3 qualifiers. It's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. However, maybe that's not the case, but General still isn't there regardless. As Crone does in an article just a couple of hours ago, OpTic Texas are targeting Prolute to stand in for the injured iLLeY. General expected to be pushed back to the bench. So, this is quite remarkable, actually. It does also make you question initially, is General, of course, the last couple of years, has he really been the best substitute choice for the OpTic teams? Because if anything, they were kind of, they're not obviously lucky that he got injured. That's not the case at all. But in a way, if it was Shotzi or Scump, for example, they would be completely screwed, right? Because they would no way General be able to sub into that role. He's traditionally a main AR. Of course, he can maybe just about make it work in iLLeY's role on the flex, but even then, it probably wasn't ideal for them. We did tend to see that Dashy and Shotzi probably this weekend had, they performed, or they had some, absolute shocker maps that they generally don't have when iLLeY's there. So, it did seem like General threw off that to some degree. That, of course, back in Modern Warfare, he subbed in for them on the Huntsman briefly. That seemed to work out, but he never actually played a game with him. And then this year he subs in for them. It didn't seem like they were all that comfortable or happy really with General's role on the team. And clearly that's not the case, right? Because now iLLeY's still kind of injured. He's got to step out at least for a few days, another couple of weeks, whatever it might happen to be. They're bringing a new player into the team. And Prolute is that man, as is described right here by Crone in the article. With General in the lineup, of course, OpTic did rather well, taking down FaZe in the quarterfinals to make it all the way through to top 4. But of course, lost to Los Angeles Thieves. And as Shotzi has just said, iLLeY's not going to return to the starting lineup, at least for now. And unfortunately, probably won't be making that return as soon as we initially thought. Now, Prolute is supposedly going to be this temporary fill-in, once again pushing General to the bench, according to multiple sources. Prolute's been competing in challenges for quite some time. He was actually crowned the North American Challenger champion during Cold War. He was on that Subliners Academy roster last year briefly, and is definitely regarded rather highly by some of the players on this OpTic team we shall see here in a second. And he was voted as one of the best Challenger players last year. So definitely, a good pickup, I think. Probably a player that makes slightly more sense for this role. Maybe a slightly more flexible player that, Dashy has a lot of respect for. I believe they've played with each other, a fair bit in the past as well. This actually also I found from 2020 with iLLeY, Dashy, and Prolute and Shotzi all playing in kind of a chow, right? So they definitely have some experience together. They think Prolute might be a better fit for this particular situation. And I'm pretty sure he was also going to maybe join this team last year, right? Because if you guys remember, there was this talk last year about the fact that Scump and Envoy, they just tested positive and they didn't even know if they were going to go to the World Championships. I'm pretty sure they just made it out in time with them, maybe a couple of days to spare on testing negative and stuff like this. But Prolute apparently was going to be one of the guys to step in for that team. I think Prolute and Spart were considered as two of the names that might have been stepping into OpTic last year if they couldn't play with Scump and Envoy, the kind of Delta duo as they were known at the time. So definitely Prolute has been on the radar of OpTic before. OpTic Prolute has been a possibility, and now apparently it's going to come to fruition, right? But definitely there's so many questions around this. Is a good idea? Is Prolute the one to go for? He actually tweets this out not too long ago, so he certainly seems to be implying as well, based on his tweets the last few hours, that yes, indeed, this is the case. This is going to be a possibility. People were saying, okay, I wonder who had that on their bingo card for 2022. Is Prolute joining and playing with the OpTic guys? But I mean, yeah, there's so many different ways to look at this. There's so many lenses. Okay, the fact that they're picking up Prolute here, does that mean that they are concerned about, how quickly iLLeY is actually going to be able to return to the starting team? Or is it just a matter of giving him the absolute maximum time he needs? Of course, maybe even going into the Prime Classic, we did hear those words from Scum, right, that the scrims with General weren't exactly as they would have maybe envisaged them to be. And maybe if they do think this is a bit more of a long-term solution that they would have liked to have been without iLLeY, then, maybe Prolute's going to come in for the near future, right? But yeah, that is really the difficulty here for the OpTic guys, is that, they find themselves in a bit of a predicament, because if iLLeY can't come back soon, they played 2 games this coming weekend, and then, of course, there's only 3 games to go. They need to do well in these qualifiers, because even if iLLeY can come back for the major in a few weeks' time, they'll have practiced a lot with Prolute. Will the team be able to click quite as well as they did before when iLLeY stepped out for the team? There's all these kind of further implications, just because we saw with the subliners, the starting roster last season, actually, right, when Asim had those kind of visa issues, he had to step away briefly. Then when he came back, the chemistry seemed to not quite be there as it was before. I don't really think that's going to be the case with this team, but of course, I'm hoping for some update from the team, really, as to the progress that iLLeY is currently going through, because at the Pro Classic, he thought that he was good enough, right? He said, okay, on the first series they played against the European Ultra Academy, look, I want to sub in. I feel like I'm well enough to play. A General's going to go to the bench again. I'm going to step into the team, and seemingly that didn't really work out for him, right? So I guess as a result of that, they're taking as much time off as he possibly needs. Prolute might be here for just a 10-day, 14-day contract or whatever. That's probably the ideal world. But of course, it gives Prolute a great opportunity to prove to the rest of the league that he does indeed belong here. And, good opportunity for him, of course. And of course, we saw this right after the major or after the Prime Classic. It wasn't actually technically a major, but as Dashi says, in the system hits diffy, kind of saying that, like, look, iLLeY's system that he's generated or created on this team works very well for pretty much anyone who's going to step into that role. So I'm sure they're probably more confident in this Prolute pickup than in general before. And also, of course, they've got to have someone go along with them to the major in Toronto, and maybe realizing that Prolute is a slightly more flexible, substitute option. And also, you got to think about in future seasons as well, whether after this year they decide, okay, well, Prolute's actually going to be our full-time sub from now on instead of general, just because he doesn't necessarily fit the bill as well as he might do. So many things that could potentially happen as a result of this. This also just I did want to bring up here because it was absolutely absurd 1 versus 4 ninja defuse here from Shotzi. I guess I'll have to share the video out with this because it's no doubt one of the most disgusting ones I've seen so far this year. And they definitely don't want Shotzi to get injured, because if he gets injured, he's probably the most impactful player in the entire game right now. So he's definitely the guy. I mean, honestly, the way he outplays these guys is absolutely incredible. Hops on the ninja defuse and gets the job done. But yeah, these are the games that OpTic are playing this upcoming weekends. We can see they've got 2 of them up against LAG and the Florida Mutineers. Seems like every time they play Florida, something is going on. But really, these 2 series are maybe more straightforward than they might have been, especially with Los Angeles Guerrillas looking pretty bad after the last few days. And of course, Mutineers, they do come top 8 at the Prime Classic, but looked very good in their group and took down OpTic right with General in their team. And OpTic in general looked pretty lost in that series, to be honest, before they clutched up against the Minnesota Rokkr in their kind of decider series. But yeah, maybe not the 2 hardest games you're ever going to play, but still, if LAG can bounce back, and Mutineers are always going to be a scary force, I think, especially online. If OpTic can come out of this week 1-1, it's not the end of the world. And that's the thing, the points do matter, because the standings right now, you might say, okay, OpTic are safe for champs, they're never going to not go to the World Championships with the amount of points they have. But also, seeding is rather key, right? If you're the number 1 seed for the World Championship, you play the number 8 team from the kind of, who qualified in the 8th position. Now, you don't really know, looking ahead of time, whether that's a good or a bad thing, right? Because let's say you're the number 1 seed, you play the 8th team at champs, or you're the number 2 seed, and therefore you play the 7th team, but all of a sudden it's actually like the subliners who come 8th, right? Let's just say, because they're currently there 11th, let's say subliners clutch up and come 8th, but they're actually looking really good and they're winning a lot of series, you might not want to be the number 1 seed in that situation, right? So you never really know how important the seeding is going to be, but in theory you do want to have the most points you possibly can, and the longer this iLLeY situation drags on, the quicker they're going to have to find what could be a medium-term solution here for this kind of iLLeY issue. Hopefully it's not, but probably by making this change, they feel like this might be happening for quite some time. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hitting the like button tells your YouTube God this is a good video. I just like you should see it as well, and hope grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.
In dogs.
Oh, the ninja.
In dogs.
Do this.
Might be able to.
Enemy bomb planted at B. Disabling the bomb.
Oh my god, I'm about to come.
No, no way.
I'm about to come.
No way, dude.
What do you mean? No!
No! No!
Yo!